This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to this very special show on Teachers Talk Radio around getting girls into STEM. And I'm going to be joined very soon by four fantastic guests. My goodness, I'm spoiled. And all of them are going to be talking about strategies and things, projects, whatever things that they think we can do to get girls into STEM. Before we get into the conversation, I just want to thank everybody. If you're listening back to this as a podcast, thank you and welcome. If you are listening live, then thank you for joining us already. I'm sure there will be plenty of people popping along as we progress through the show. Before we start, I thought it would be good to outline why this show is happening, why we're doing it, on this issue of getting girls into STEM. So currently, this has been a trend really over the last 10 years. If you look at any data, if you look at any studies that have been done on this, and one of those studies about women in STEM established that, so if we went through each year from 2015 through to 2020, around 25% of graduates were female through the STEM subject lines. So, for example, 2015 was 25%, 16 was 24%, 17 was 25%, 18 was 26%, 19 was 26%. So it's more or less going at 75-25 on average of men graduating from STEM subjects versus women graduating from STEM subjects. So, and you can find that data anywhere. Lots of people have done studies on this. The subject breakdown is quite interesting for female graduates in STEM subjects. So in physical sciences, that figure is slightly higher for women, for female graduates. So that's more between 40 and 43%. Mathematical sciences is around 38 to 39%. But then with engineering and tech and computer science, we're down at sort of 15 to 16% of graduates in those subjects are women. So these are quite big gaps. I mean, if you look at engineering and tech and computer science as an example, that's 85% versus 15% on average. So there is sort of work to do here. Now, obviously, within this show, we can't necessarily explore in huge detail why those stats are what they are. Certainly, there are historic issues that we can consider and discuss. There are issues around school and how that is formulated, and yeah, there's certainly there's plenty to look at there. But a lot of schools are trying to combat this and are trying to enable women and girls to get into STEM and to have a better shot at going to university to study a STEM subject and addressing this balance, or redressing this balance, I should say. So it's going to be really interesting to hear from my guest this evening on this issue. I mean, the engineering one is pretty staggering if you consider, engineering, 8 to 10% of engineering professionals, in fact, 10% in 2019 were women in engineering from the STEM workforce survey. These are really low numbers when you consider that there are a huge number of girls and women who are interested in STEM. So something somewhere or someone somewhere is stopping this from happening, or it's just not happening. So that's basically what we're going to be exploring tonight. So I'm going to start by just introducing a number of my guests. But before I do that, just to give a special shout to Innovate Her, who are a wonderful company who are aimed really at getting more girls into STEM and are supporting this show tonight, which is fantastic. And we're going to be hearing more from Mika, who is from Innovate Her, later on in the show, who's going to be talking a little bit about what they do and what they've observed, and thinking about how they can support schools in sort of closing that gap. But before we talk to Mika, I thought maybe it would be a good start to start with Anthony. First, I've got Dr. Anthony Hoyle, who is a microbiologist turned science teacher, who's a senior lead teacher, SLE, and works in the north of England. Anthony, are you there?
I hope so. Can you hear me, Tom?
I can hear you loud and clear. How are you this evening? Are you okay?
I'm good, thank you very much. My two small children burst in the room literally 2 minutes ago. I've escorted them back out. Fingers crossed they'll remain out of the room for the duration.
Brilliant. They must be so excited by the topic of getting girls into STEM. They heard that title and they were like, we've got to listen to this.
I think they believe it for my daughter. She's a wannabe pilot stroke scientist stroke football player. So at age 8, she's very much going down that route.
Brilliant. Well, listen, I thought maybe a good starting point, just before we I ask you more of the questions about what you're doing in your school and so on. Can you tell us a little, just briefly, about what you're currently doing and your sort of job up to that point, and maybe why you are passionate about this issue of getting girls into STEM?
I think I'll start with your last question, if that's okay. And we've just touched on it. It's down to my own little girl. You know, I want her to have sort of every opportunity that's available to her, and that needs to start right now down at primary school. And everything that's going on in school, in the media, via the government, from home, needs to break down these barriers and crush those stereotypes that STEM careers are just for boys. Because I've come to this conclusion that as a father and a teacher, that our young children are almost put into molds for boys and molds for girls from the moment they're born, aren't they? It's pink clothes, it's dolls, it's furry animals, it's singing and dancing for girls, and it's tractors, diggers, robots, rockets for boys. Now, I'm very much against all of that, and I'm constantly fighting against that. And things are changing slowly, but I still think there's a huge stereotype issue out there where many girls just don't see themselves as STEM material, really. I came across a study recently done in the 80s in Australia, where they got 5,000 primary school children. It's called the Draw a Scientist test. I don't know if you've heard of it. No. 5,000 children to draw a scientist. All of them drew an old white man, bar 2% that drew a woman. So what does that say about what our primary school children believe, you know, a scientist is and a scientist looks like? They believe it's an old white man, you know, and that's not that long ago. I think things have changed a little bit, but I think we've got a hell of a lot of work still to do, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really fascinating study. I'll have to look that one up. I know that Graham Andre, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's like a primary teacher. I know he did a program which is available on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it, where like basically he like I can't remember which TV channel it was who took over his class, but essentially he allowed them to take over his class and explore sort of gender stereotypes within a classroom space. And a lot of you know, it was exactly what you just said. A lot of the sort of findings were that you know, the view that the girls had of what they could or would do later in life was very much along the lines of what you just suggested. So, you know, it's sort of, I mean, have you, within your science, you know, you're a science teacher, how have you found the gender balance between the interest in STEM in your classroom between boys and girls? Have you noticed a difference?
I mean, that's sort of what I'm investigating at the minute. We're looking at sort of the barriers that are in place for our girls, because what's triggered my own sort of research in school is last year, and it's looking like possibly this year, our biggest sort of sub-cohort of underachievers is our disadvantaged, high-achieving girls. They're our biggest underachieving cohort. Now, there's something not right there. And I think that aligns with the issues of you know, girls with ability not following careers, and that's what sort of kicked off my own research within school to try and understand the reasons behind that. It's underway at the minute. I undertook a survey, an anonymous survey of those girls at the start of the year. I'm introducing a series of strategies throughout the year to try and change their thoughts and mindset on STEM and their feelings of how they're getting on in class because of that survey that I undertook at the start. 50% of them said they didn't feel confident in science, and that's something that we can work on and can work with.
Do you know how that figure compares to the boys? I mean, do you have any idea of if you ask them the same question? I'm guessing you think that would come out more substantial, that boys would feel more confident?
I think it would, because we're not seeing issues with underachievement or uptake of STEM. So I've not really looked at the boys. It's not a boy issue. For any good study, we would have to do that. I'm just assuming, there's no issue there in terms of uptake and our data, and I'm just concentrating on the girls at the minute. So my crux of it is to put those girls sort of front and center within the classroom, not literally on the front row and in the center, but they're getting that additional little bit of TLC in the classroom, that little bit of attention, making them feel successful and empowered. Take their work, share it under the visualizer, just little and often. That quality first teaching, but with a bit of a focus on that cohort. And then I've got a series of guest speakers coming in throughout the year to speak to that cohort of girls about careers within STEM. And I think we kicked it off really well at the start of the year. The feedback was great, where we had an ex-pupil of ours, I'm sure she won't mind us mentioning, Amy Knowles, who left in 2017, went to Greenhead College, went to Newcastle University, and she ended up doing a degree in genetics, and is now working at the local hospital, Calderdale Royal Hospital, in the cellular pathology lab. So we had her back, and we had her first slide was a picture of her in a school uniform on her first day at Trinity Academy Halifax, and her last slide was her in a lab coat in her job. So that opened the eyes of a lot of our girls. We've got 2/3 of our pupils, 64% of all pupils in the school are in the top 20% of deprivation within the country. There's a lack of role models at home. There's a lack of aspirations. There's a lack of exposure to STEM careers and what's out there. So getting somebody from the local area who's been in the school, who's in your uniform, who's made it and done it, and he's loving it, to come back and speak to those girls was really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the sort of things that I was gonna particularly ask you about, Anthony, was the sort of let's call it enrichment activities or things. I mean, presumably you will probably do more of these sort of things, but do you think that's the most powerful strategy that you've used, or are there others that you would sort of put up there?
I mean, this is where early days when we've really seriously started putting STEM at the forefront. It kicked off last year when we launched our Earthshot pledges, where we aimed as a MAT to become a greener and more sustainable multi-academy trust. And then that kick-started our sort of big push with STEM. And there's a whole range of activities and resources and opportunities on offer for our kids. And I'm just a small wheel, in a big machine that does my little bit. Catherine Walker and Hayley Wild are two fantastic members of staff who lead on a lot of the STEM initiatives. But there's all sorts going on. In fact, every school year has 2 embedded STEM opportunities written into the calendar. So year 7, they have 2. Every member of the school population in year 7 has 2 STEM events in 7, 2 in 8, 2 in 9, 2 in 10, 2 in 11, and then optional and enrichment activities to support that. For instance, these girls that I've just been talking about, they're going out to Arla Foods in Leeds and spending a full day with them in celebration of the International Women in STEM Day, which was the 11th of February. We were on half term then, so they've agreed to kick it back to now. So Arla are looking after them all day, and the girls are spending all day there speaking to sensory scientists, looking at their production and their products, meeting a STEM ambassador, meeting female role models within the company, a female farmer. And there's a whole program of events going on from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. and that's next Tuesday. And that's just one of the many things that are going on in the background. We obviously have our STEM club, and we've got a Cyber First club for girls. We've got Earthshot club. We have Digital Future club. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the background. So
that sounds absolutely fantastic. That sounds amazing. I mean, do you think that? I mean, are you confident it'll work?
No. But it's showing real promise and uptake. We keep a really close eye on what the uptake is in the clubs, and we're obviously striving for a 50-50 split between the boy and girls, and that's what we're getting in STEM Club. Just looking at the recent figures, so we're getting representation of females there. As I say, this only kicked off a year ago. We're only a year in, and it's going to be more of a marathon than a sprint. But I certainly think we're heading in the right direction, and we will undertake anonymous surveys and get some pupil voice and get some feedback on it. But it's looking really promising.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really, really interesting and engaging and everything else. Do you think? I mean, how long have you been teaching for, Anthony? If you don't mind me asking.
18 years.
Right. I thought maybe you yeah, that's decent. Good run. But I was going to ask, do you think? Are there any sort of mistakes or things where you think, oh, you know what? In my past sort of life as a teacher, there were maybe activities or decisions or things that I wasn't doing or didn't do. Are there anything you could sort of look back on and sort of, if you were advising sort of your younger self now, what to do or not to do, that you would say?
I know exactly where you're coming from there. And something that really springs to mind. I've worked in 3 schools now over the years, and in the previous school there was initiative of again trying to get more girls into STEM and science, and it was called this idea. It wasn't mine, but I was involved in the process. It came up with, and it was called the science of makeup. How awful is that? In terms of challenging stereotypes, what you're actually doing is reinforcing them, aren't you? And you look back, 15 years ago, and what were we trying to do? The science of makeup, Jesus, So yeah, you want to stay well away from sort of, well-meaning but poorly designed programs like that, that actually reinforce that awful narrative. So yeah, stay well away from that stuff. As I said, years ago in a school years ago, but you learn from your mistakes, don't you?
Listen, I'm sure you're not the only one who would have similar sort of stories, to share. Like even for me, I teach history, obviously, but even for me, if I think of some of the, I don't know, some of the lessons or some of the themes or whatever, start of my career, you sort of look back and go, yeah, like there were weaknesses there were things that were awful. So yeah,
like brain gym.
Say again.
Like brain gym.
I never fell for brain gym ever.
We had a short dose of that years ago as well.
Yeah, I never fell for brain gym, but I'm thinking along the lines of things where, I don't know, where you've taught things in a very sort of, like the stereotypical curriculum, like the curriculum conversations nowadays where we talk about diversifying the curriculum and so on. Things that are sort of the opposite of that. So not in maybe a completely obvious way, but certainly, it would be obvious now that you'd look at it and go, hang on a minute, So I guess that's a positive change, just like this, so that's great. Listen, I'm going to come back to you, Anthony, because I have more questions to ask you, but I thought I would bring in some of my other guests. So I hope I'm going to say this correctly, but is it Jyoti?
Hi, Tom, it's Jyoti.
Jyoti, sorry, nearly there. Jyoti.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining in tonight and for being so enthusiastic about wanting to as well. That's amazing. Now, listen, you have got a ton of experience that you're going to talk to us about getting girls into STEM. But before we get on to that, can you tell me a little bit about your current role and your path towards that role?
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
Yeah, sure. Just before February half term, I was made assistant principal, leading in STEAM careers and transition. Before that, I was STEAM coordinator. I'm still the head of computing, and I was a faculty leader.
How are you awake right now for this? How are you awake? That'd be a better show topic. We should have done that.
Yeah. So that's how I started. So I started as a teacher of IT. That's what I was trained in.
Yeah.
then it's moved on to computing, computer science, and now looking at STEM and STEAM.
And I know sort of you've done a lot of work on changing the mindset at a classroom level of your students, and sort of about the importance of females in the STEM industry and the shortage there is nationally and globally. Do you think, I mean, why do you think there is that gap? That would be sort of my first question I was going to ask you.
It comes back to that representation. That's for me, where I see, you know, if you don't feel you're represented, would you aspire? Do you feel that you belong? And there has been a lot of research, like you've mentioned, and Dr. Anthony, where there is that research, especially when it comes to females, about sense of belonging, and stereotypes. So there is that gap, massive gap, because, you know, what has the traditional narrative always been, when it comes to STEM? I remember when I was at school and I started my first IT lesson, I wasn't really blown up by it. There was no representation. I didn't feel like it was something I would take as a career, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's that big gap, and, you know, do you belong? Am I represented or not?
I mean, that's interesting that you yourself have obviously come through this system, and you're now teaching a STEM subject, and I guess your own experience plays into that, doesn't it, in the classroom, in terms of how you approach the issue?
Heavily. I loved IT, computers, when I was growing up, but in school it wasn't seen, where, you know, you were pushed. It was, you know, I was in school in the 90s, and, you know, you were taught spreadsheets and PowerPoints, and I was going home and, you know, just creating web pages at home and HTML designing. So there wasn't any of that. So it didn't, you know, I didn't see it as a career or something I could go into. And I took a completely different route. I went into psychology. That's why I did my degree in human psychology. And I went into computing later on. I went back to it, and then I trained into it. But I completely went into a different direction, because I didn't see that I could go somewhere with this, if that, you know, it wasn't shown to me in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about what you've actually done then. So tell us about, you know, we've talked about the problem. I said at the very beginning, and by the way, thank you to everyone for joining. If you've just joined, this is Teachers Talk Radio. We're live. This is a show all about getting more girls into STEM, brought to you with Innovate Her, who you can see in the speaker there. And if you want to find out more, by the way, about Innovate Her at any point during the show, you can just scroll up to the top. You've got 2 pinned tweets from Innovate Her. Fantastic projects and initiatives and opportunities for your students to get involved in. Definitely check that out. It's at the top of the space there, and see what they've got to offer. Anyway, sorry. So we were talking about that, and obviously the other thing I was going to say is we've got lots of people joining in. If you want to have your say tonight, then feel free to click the little button in the bottom left, and you can become a speaker as well and share what you've done or what you're doing in your school to get more girls into STEM subjects. So that'd be brilliant as well. Tell us about what you've done and tell us about how you've done it.
So I can start with my current school. I've worked in 3 schools. When I first started as an NQT, my first school, again, IT has always been a very heavily boys subject. Very few girls was teaching it. And it was that when I started my second school, the one I'm in right now, that I really pushed a lot of different strategies. So when I started at my current school, there was only one girl at GCSE group, and the rest were boys. So first step was Key Stage 3 curriculum. My subject, computing, that's where my focus was. And it was looking at the curriculum and making it creative, looking at topics we were teaching, how we were teaching it, what we wanted to teach. And it was introducing programming, which they really grasped, the students, especially the girls. So within Python programming, I introduced Python Turtle. So we're visualizing our code, we're looking at different things that our code can do. So that was first area, that looking at the curriculum and shaping that and really thinking about what we're learning it, why are we learning it, and where can this take you as well, showing that in the future, where can it go. Not only that, I started. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go on. No. I was just going to ask you to maybe give us more detail or a story about how those things went down.
So first, it was the planning stages of the curriculum of what I wanted to do. So when it came to programming and Python, it's a text-based programming language, and you want to make it for our year sevens. You want to make it engaging. They want to grasp with it. So I introduced Python Turtle. So it's visualizing code. So when you write it, its graphics are drawn. So we were creating shapes, we were adding color, sizes, and we were experimenting different kind of flower spiral looks. And the students really engaged in that. They became so enthusiastic. They were learning about coding, they were learning algorithms, and they wanted to know more. They wanted to learn more because they could see the connection of what their code's doing. And then when we went to write code, creating a chatbot, for example, like if a student was to type something in and the chatbot was programmed to answer back, again, that got them enthusiastic because they started to make links about, oh, how does this work and what does it do? So it's giving the tools to the students and introducing concepts to them which they can link to within their lives. They can make that connection. So that's what I worked quite a bit on the curriculum, looking at technology and the environment, for example. How does it impact our environment? The importance of technology as well. Bringing all of that within the curriculum. So those were the examples that I started to embed and change around. Cybersecurity, again, we're relating to students' love. As soon as I mention cybersecurity, oh, hacking, that's all they say. And we're like, right, okay, let's go to the drawing board. It's not all about hacking. Hacking is against the law. But ethical hacking, on the other hand, is this. And they were like, oh, we didn't know this. So it was about cybersecurity and, again, relating it to our daily lives, the importance of it. So our year sevens, we learned about malware, viruses. We're learning about identity theft. We're learning about how to make sure your devices are safe and keep it. And then we're building up on that knowledge from year 7 to year 9. And we're going technical as well. But again, we're still bringing it back to the connections we can make to our daily lives, and we can see where they can go with it. So made sure within the curriculum, whenever we started to talk about a topic, we always made sure we related it to, this is what you could do in the future, or this is how it's linked to a career as well. And bringing examples in with that and showing examples of people who are in jobs within that and careers within that, so they can make that link, that what they're learning is just not isolated, it's actually linked through.
Got you. I mean, what I was gonna ask you, just on these things, projects, whatever, interventions that you've introduced, what have been the challenges for you from the girls themselves, but also from a logistical point of view? Because we've had a comment actually from Bethany. Thank you for listening, Bethany, by the way. Bethany has said that I teach design tech and the funding is non-existent for tech subjects. Trying to use computers to develop skills for the future are also a struggle, as we lack funding for equipment, including computers. I was going to ask you and Anthony, actually, and we'll bring Mika as well in later on this from Innovate Her, but I was going to ask you both, what, when it comes to heads of department or subject leads or teachers who are short on money, which many will be, they might not have a budget at all for anything. Have you got any advice for them or any tips for them? That was going to be one of my questions further down the line.
Definitely, there is quite a bit of funding out there for STEM and competing as well. With STEM, NEON, NEON, you can apply for some bursary, which I have done in the past. And also the STEM Learning website. There is a link for grants and schemes that you could apply for to get supporting. So those are the ones I've used in the past.
Yeah, I mean, now's probably a good segue as well, just to mention that next week there is a free assembly every day from Innovate Her. I've just tweeted from my account the link to sign up for the assemblies. They're completely free. I will pin that into the show as well. If you're listening to this as a podcast, I'll pop it in the show notes. But essentially, this is every day from March the 6th until March the 10th. It's a 20-minute assembly each day, zooming into STEM classrooms. So if you teach a STEM subject, or if you know someone who does, then this is completely free. Monday, we've got science-themed assembly, and that's delivered by Claire Jones, who is a site environmental and energy leader. Tuesday, technology-themed. Naya Patel, who's a product designer and a senior BI developer. Someone's going to have to tell what that is. Bio something. Wednesday, March the 8th, engineering, a mechanical engineer, arts on the Thursday. Wow, I mean, it's brilliant. Every day next week, 20-minute assembly, sign up for free. I've pinned it in the space if you're interested in sort of signing yourself up or your class up or anything like that. So, but I agree with you. There will be funding out there for programs for schools to be able to get equipment. I guess it's just a case of being able to apply for the right grants, isn't it? Or to know where to go for it.
Yeah, definitely. There is Neon STEM Learning are the ones that I'm sure there's more as well, but they are the ones I've used in the past.
Yeah. Anthony, I don't know whether you've got anything on that in terms of any advice or guidance you would give to a subject lead where they don't have a budget.
I think there's a lot you can do that costs absolutely nothing. First, I'd look in-house and see who you've got in your team and across the school. I mean, we're lucky we've got quite a large staff body. And just within science, we've got a female ex-chemical engineer who worked at Alloy Colloids in Bradford for many years. We've got a female ex-audiologist who worked at the NHS for many years. So they're two really powerful, strong female role models for careers in STEM. And then I'd say, look to your alumni, look to your ex-students, stay in touch with those that pursue a STEM field. You know the kind of pupils that you want to have back to speak to them. And I've made a concerted effort in the last, this is my 6th year at Trinity, to stay in touch. And that's how we've had ex-pupils in to speak. And I've got another pupil who's just coming up to his 18th birthday, he tells me next week, who's about to become a fully qualified electrician. Now, it is a young man, but I'm hoping there'll be a female apprentice on his, on his course or somebody he knows, and I'd love to get him back in as well. Again, he's Trinity homegrown from the local estate, doing really well. So that costs nothing. These people are keen to give up their time. They're ex-students. They want to come back. They're from the local community. And I'd argue there's a lot you can do with your resources as well. I mean, we have careers slides, and where at the start of lessons within a certain unit, there's literally a job grabbed from the local area in STEM, and it's the second slide that's on our PowerPoint. And you can talk about, well, this is up for grabs in Manchester or in Bradford. It's paying this much money. It links to what we're doing in this lesson. What we're doing today will help you get that job. You know, that's cool. That costs nothing, does it? So, and also there's loads of free resources out there from OCR and the STEM Centre where you can put positive female role models in STEM front and centre on every single door in science. We have a female hero within the field of STEM, such as Cynthia Breazeal, Mae Jemison, the first black woman in space. They're all over, so that children, wherever they're looking, they're seeing positive female role models. These are free, from your exam board or from the STEM Centre. So we haven't spent very much, to be fair. And it's gaining traction. I've had some girls come and approach me and request speakers now for later in the year, which is lovely. They've gone from sitting there in absolute silence, to now asking questions and now requesting speakers themselves. I've had a girl speak to me last week, Evie, wanting to hear from the Royal Engineers within the Army. She wants them to come in. She says, I don't want to get shot at, but I want to do something with my hands, in terms of engineering. And another pupil, another girl, Julia, has come to speak to me separately and asked to hear from a forensic scientist or something like that. You know, so it's gaining traction. And as I say, we spent very little.
Yeah, I know. Oh, go on.
Sorry, no, I was just going to jump into that, saying also using STEM ambassadors, which I've used in the past, that cost nothing, and you can tailor it. I did a Women in STEM Day, and we got great STEM ambassadors coming in and talking to our students, which was fantastic. And also jumping on regarding displays, lots of posters, changed my classroom display as well. You know, having a lot of women in tech, women in STEM posters around for students to see as well, just like Dr. Anthony mentioned. Again, they're all free resources online.
I mean, this is interesting. Paul, who is a regular TTR listener, good evening, Paul, and supports Everton, so we love him. We love him here. My 13, feel sorry for him and love him. My 13-year-old daughter sat with me now, says she loves STEM, goes to a high school who are a STEM school, but she says that it's not actively encouraged ahead of other subjects. So languages and humanities are the most pushed, in inverted commas, subjects. I mean, I was going to ask you guys, like, do you feel like, possibly this is an awkward question for you both, but do you feel that you've got to really fight for your space within the sort of like curriculum space in school and sort of the enrichment calendar, or do you feel like, you know, everyone's sort of behind this is really important?
I mean, I'll jump in if that's all right. We were really lucky because this was launched, all the senior team and the leaders, in May last year. We had a huge meeting where it was basically agreed that STEM, or STEAM, as sometimes referred to, is going to be on our agenda. It's going to be top of the agenda alongside literacy. It was put front and centre from top down. So we're quite privileged, actually, that, you know, you can get the space you need, you can get the time you need, you can get the support, the facilities. So from my own personal experience, I'm blessed, actually. We're very lucky. The Matt and the school are very supportive.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We've got a caller in, actually, which is great. So Miss Carrod, are you there?
Yeah, it's Bal Carrod. I'm a head of science in Birmingham.
Good evening to you. How are you today?
I'm good. This is my first time on something like this.
Well, I thank you very much for calling in. It's an absolute pleasure. We're having a humdinger of a chat, I'm sure you've realised.
Yeah, and it's a good one for me because of the cultural makeup of my school. So my school...
Go ahead, tell us about you and tell us about how you're getting girls into STEM.
Well, so I'm trying really hard to get girls into STEM, but I work at a school that is right in the heart of Aston. And most of the students are Muslim. So there's a cultural there can be cultural reasons why girls don't feel like they want to get into STEM subjects in my school, I feel.
Interesting. Okay.
There's also the fact that there's a lot of problems with boys in the inner cities now. So the agenda is boys' achievement, which I feel like has slightly squeezed girls out.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think we're a bit. My school also bucks the national trend. We're more male teacher heavy than female teacher heavy, which is really weird.
Okay. So how are you trying to combat that within your school?
So firstly, I've got a bit of a battle on two fronts, actually, because it's not just with the kids, it's with the staff sometimes as well.
Okay.
And I also find that some women actually are part of the problem. They don't personally feel like leaders or display the attributes of leadership, maybe because of their own engendering.
Interesting.
And I've actually been doing my masters on this about whether women limit themselves because of their own engendering rather than what society does to them.
So how do you think that sort of expresses itself? Like, what is that in practice?
We haven't had a girl apply for A-level physics in 3 years. Wow. We haven't had one go to A2 in all that time. This year our numbers in science have gone down, and we're girl heavy in terms of students because we've got a high achieving boys school at the top of the road. So some of our boys go there that we'd normally get. So if we've got more girls in the school as a percentage, why is that not converting into more numbers?
That's interesting. I mean, so what have you done to have you tried to do anything different to sort of encourage that?
Right.
Or
So I've changed my department. It needed a lot of change. So now I'm starting to think about more girls in STEM. So I'm now trying to use myself as a role model as an Asian girl who has done very well, who came from a working class background. My dad came to this country from India. I also am starting to have conversations now. I'm starting to feel a bit braver about gender in the workplace with staff and students.
Yeah.
Because I often find in my classrooms automatically the boys sit on one side of the room and the girls sit on the other. And I know that happens in every classroom.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's
however, in my classrooms, when I sit them boy, girl, I have running battles with it, which I have never had in the other 4 schools that I've worked in.
Interesting. Okay. So is that sort of part of your strategy, if you like, to sort of integrate the two together more?
Yeah, so it's a 2-fronted attack. One with the staff and one with the students. So I did something very brave this year. I actually had a child through a donor insemination and IVF. And I'm a biology teacher.
Congrats. Congratulations.
So I decided to use myself as a case study in my lesson on assisted conception.
Yeah.
And I basically used all the pictures of my embryo. I went abroad during lockdown to have this done. And I just shared my story.
Wow. And how did that go down?
The girls really loved it, and I got a lot of brownie points. But the boys were like, she's just made a lesson for the girls. And I was just like, just because it's about a woman and her journey does not mean it's not for boys.
Yeah, that's wow. I mean, what an example that is to be able to give.
Well, there's the cultural thing about the ethics of it. Like, was it the right thing to do?
Two seconds. Heather, I'm just trying to mute you at the moment, so I'm just going to leave you on mute. Is that okay? Because you just leave it there. Brilliant. Leave it on mute. That's excellent. Sorry, carry on, Miss Cara.
So, yeah, so there's quite a few issues at the moment, but I really want to now start working on girls in science in particular. I just noticed this flicking through Twitter and I thought, oh, that looks really good. So today was World Book Day. So the book that I've been telling...
It was.
The book I told all my students about today was called Stories for South Asian Supergirls.
Okay.
And in there are a lot of examples. The author is a woman called Raj Kaur, who founded the Pink Laddu Project. And she tries to deal with stereotypes, particularly in South Asian culture. So I'm now trying to link a few things together. So it's really good for me to sit here, and I was really, it was really helpful to have Jyoti here actually as well to speak about.
Well, Jyoti has her hand up, so we're going to bring her back in. Jyoti, do you want to sort of come in on anything that Miss Carol said?
I'm down the road from your school.
How are you?
Yeah.
There you go.
Don't tell anybody what I said.
Brilliant. Well, that's a good link, though.
It is. You can come to our school, see what we've done, and how we've really developed STEM and STEAM.
That's cool. That's super
That's
cool.
Really funny.
I was just going to add, there's some research done called Science Capital, if anyone has heard of it, by Louise Archer and team through King's College. That's where I'm currently doing my Masters in STEM Education. And the research on Science Capital is fantastic to read how to make sure we develop students' science capital and challenging all the points that we're making about stereotypes, belonging, representation, all of those. So research with Science Capital, Louise Archer and Emily Dawson's really, really good to read as well within the classroom. And there's some strategies that they have also designed, and using the Science Capital framework as well within your department and school is useful.
That's brilliant. I'm not a science teacher. This sounds brilliant.
I'll have
Yeah.
a look at those
No
resources.
problem. Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's all about like you said, exposure. Going out there now. You're Birmingham based, so I've taken students to STEM Fest, Tech West Midlands, Girls That Geek, and they're all held locally. It's free. And the girls that I took, they absolutely loved it. When I took my first set of girls to STEM Fest West Midlands at Millennium Point, they were in year 8, and now they're in year 13, and some have left as well to go to university, and that really made an impact. They loved all of that, meeting people from different workplaces, having a talk about the different career opportunities. They saw it, they made links to it back at school, and they took it further. I had my biggest cohort of students going into tech last year, girls going in for higher education. We had a high number of girls this year, 50% nearly taking GCSE computer science. So it's been built up. So definitely, colleagues who are looking for career things, please do have a look at local opportunities where you can take students out on trips and meeting people actually from the workforce and them discussing. And we brought some members in as well. I ran a STEM careers fair, and we got people in from engineering. HS2 came in. We had people from Aston University. We had Metro Alliance, so many different from varieties of workplaces coming in and coming to speak to our students. So please do try those strategies out as well. Oh, just checking. Also, another way is STEM Club. We've called it STEAM this year. STEM Club is fantastic. Getting our girls in, doing a lot of robotics. With every half term, we keep a theme of what we're doing. So this half term, we're going to be looking at engineering. We're looking at team building skills. We're actually doing some jewelry making as well. I've got some different equipment for them to use, but also we're building robots, doing Robot Wars, which they're really engaged in. Absolutely loved Robot Wars. We've got a Lego animation, a joint venture going on right now, which they're creating the art set design. They're now filming their Lego animation. We're going to then add music to it. They're all going to edit it, and we're going to publish it and really celebrate the great work they're doing. So STEM Club and STEAM Club has been a real big success at my school. And the students love it. For example, I've got these bunch of year 7 girls who started to love making paper aeroplanes at lunchtime. So I said, okay, girls, can you come to STEAM Club, please? And they came, and we started to make different types of paper aeroplanes, and they started to test it. They were changing it, and they were, measuring how far it's going, and they tweaked their design. And I said, look what you're doing, girls. These are fantastic skills, and they absolutely loved it.
To be honest, Jofie, I want to join your club as well. It sounds amazing. Like, you're so passionate about it all. It sounds mint. If I was there, I'd want to do the paper airplanes club. That's quality. Listen, this could be a very good segue for me to bring Mika in. Mika, if you're there, you can just unmute yourself in the bottom left.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Good evening. We can hear you beautifully loud and clear. How have you found the discussion so far? Is there anything you've enjoyed or anything you sort of picked up on that you've enjoyed so far?
I think I just want to say, listening to everyone in here has just brought me a lot of joy. It's just lovely to hear from teachers who are so passionate about this subject, because we share that passion. So that's the first thing, and I think one thing that really resonates with me is the use of role models and ambassadors, because this is something that we rely on basically with Innovate Her. It's our bread and butter, and we found that it is the most effective way to get girls into STEM. So it's really nice to hear that other teachers and schools are using that, because it is just so valuable.
Yeah, because everyone's mentioned this idea of role models. Even Anthony said, like, bringing former students in. That's sort of this idea of like a STEM role model. I was wondering, with regards to Innovate Her, how do they use that idea of role models?
So with Innovate Her, we've used role models since we were born, basically. We used to be face to face before the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit, we were forced to pivot to an online model. But the way we use role models is we've got an e-learning platform, basically, and we're partnered with various tech organisations, and through them, it's amazing. We're able to tap into their workforce. So we've been introduced to these amazing STEM role models, and we're able to use these inspiring women through our educational content that sits on our platform. So, you know, we've got female engineers, games designers, even astronauts on our e-learning platform. So yeah, we're just able to do that through these partnerships that we've got with these organisations.
So tell me a bit more about this. You mentioned this e-learning platform. You know, what is it, and who accesses it, and what's on it, and how does it get girls into STEM?
So basically, our e-learning platform, it's essentially a tool for teachers. It contains STEM programs, videos, short courses, and they've all been made to help elevate computer-based lessons, and more importantly, to ignite an interest in STEM subjects for girls and non-binary teens, and also diverse students as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, how is the content unique? You know, what is it about this content that gets you passionate about it? Because you know, we've spoken a couple of times. I can tell you're passionate about it. So what's unique about it?
Well, basically, it's all about the content. So through our research, one thing that was super clear is that we just do not use enough diverse role models for girls and diverse teens to look up to. When you think of the tech whizzes of the world, you think of, you know, your Steve Jobs or your Elon Musks, but you never think of the Ada Lovelaces or the Sally Riders, and we're really trying to change that. I think what's different about the content on our e-learning platform is that the partnership with our organisations, it allows us to feature real life inspiring female role models throughout. Another thing that's quite interesting about what we do is all of our content, although it's quite outside of the box, we do make sure it's curriculum linked and classroom friendly. So for example, at the moment we've got a UX design course, and it's not something that, you know, you think of when you think of GCSE usually, but we have made sure that it is curriculum linked and it's classroom friendly. And we do have schools across the UK using that at the moment. So I think that, I'd say the main thing is just the use of these inspiring female role models throughout our content.
Well, I mentioned earlier these sort of free assemblies that you're running next week for people to get involved in, and you've got you've got examples of these positive female role models speaking on each day.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because that's next week,
of course,
isn't
it? Yeah. So next week's International Women's Day, and for us, it's pretty much our favourite day of the year. And the theme is embracing equity. So we basically thought, you know, how can we bring that theme and how can we bring what we do in regards to getting girls into STEM together? So we came up with the idea of embracing equity within STEAM. So basically what we're doing next week is every day of the week, we're going to hold a 20-minute assembly. It's free for classrooms across the UK. And every assembly will be themed around either science, technology, engineering, art or maths. The assemblies focus on equity, equality in the industry, and basically allows girls and diverse teens to recognise themselves in the industry. And also every single assembly that we do host next week will feature an inspiring role model. So we're doing that every single day next week. It's going to be a little bit hectic because we are only a team of 9, but we're really, really looking forward to it. And so far we've had great success. I think it's something around 10,000 students are coming so far. Wow. So it's been quite successful, but we're really, really looking forward to it.
That's amazing. So it's ages 11 to 17, isn't it? And all genders are welcome to these assemblies.
Of course, yeah. So the one thing that we are really passionate about as well is allyship. Whereas, you know, our content and our mission is aimed towards girls, non-binary teens and diverse teenagers. But essentially, we don't want to alienate or exclude boys. So every single thing that we do it with an open mind, and we do include all genders, because we wouldn't be great role models if we weren't inclusive ourselves, would we? So everything we do, we welcome any genders, including the assemblies next week.
If you had a piece of advice for teachers wanting to increase their STEM uptake, and obviously it could be something to do with Innovate Her, it could be, you know, the world, what sort of advice would you give them?
Well, to be honest, I think the speakers today have made this really easy for me, because I'm just going to basically repeat it. It really is all about these diverse role models. If you can embed them into your teaching, whether it's through your curriculum, whether it's through principal resources, any way that you can embed these diverse role models, it'll really help to break down those preconceptions of what people think it means to work in STEM, what people think someone that, you know, works in STEM looks like. It's all about breaking down those barriers. But of course, also a shameless plug here, just contact us. We would absolutely love to host something for you. We'll work with you. You know, I heard that someone said in the comments that they struggle with getting funding, and that really frustrates us, because how are we meant to allow our youth to flourish if we're not putting the funding behind it? But everything we do is completely free, so even if you just want to drop us a message, we'll see what we can do for you. Or of course, come next week as well. Everyone's welcome.
Bethany, I hope you heard that, because that sounds great. It was Bethany who tweeted that in earlier about the funding barriers. So Bethany, if there's a good offer there from Mika, if you want to DM Innovate Her and find out what the crack is. If anybody wants to find out more about Innovate Her, I'm guessing they can go to the website, innovateher.co.uk, but is there anything else you want them to do?
So the website's great. Our e-learning platform is online.innovateher.co.uk, so feel free to have a look at that. But we're really open to conversations, to be honest. So if you just drop us a message, you can drop us an email at hello@study@innovateher.co.uk. hello@innovateher.co.uk, and we can just get that conversation going. You know, we're a small team of 9, so we're constantly online somewhere or other. So if you want to just drop us a message, drop us an email, and we can just have a chat and see, you know, what might work for you and your.
Well, I think Miss Carrod might have a question, actually. Miss Carrod, you've got your hand up. Please.
Yes, just quickly, I have registered myself while I've been listening, and I had gone on to the STEM Ambassadors site as well and requested some speakers for our assemblies next week for British Science Week. If our timings don't fit in with your live events, will there be any recordings available?
Yes, there will be. So what we're doing after, we're aware that these 20-minute assemblies, there are a fixed time, so we want to make sure that everyone can get the content even if they can't make it. So afterwards we will be uploading all of the recordings onto our e-learning platform, so just if you have a look at our socials, we'll announce when that's up. But yeah, definitely just keep your eyes peeled, because we're gonna upload everything onto there.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And they do, and they do sound really great. Mika, thanks so much for that. It sounds fantastic what you're doing. The assemblies sound brilliant. I may check in again with you later on, just to ask you a few other questions. But Miss Carrod, I wanted to ask you, just bring you back in, just briefly. I wanted to, going back to what you were saying earlier about the challenges in your context, does that ever get you down? Do you feel?
Yes.
I mean, you know what you were saying about no. You said there's no female has gone into A-level physics for 3 years.
No, and this year for the first time we didn't have a cohort in year 12 at all. But part of that problem is national, because I, as a head of science now, I think I've been head of science in 2 schools now for 7 years. Science, I feel, has become the least important core subject, because we were removed off the measures as an important subject. We're not as important as maths and English. Then the government rebalanced the curriculum, and science lost a lot of time in a lot of schools to other areas. We're really struggling to get through the content now. So if they wanted to rebalance the curriculum, they should have rebalanced the assessment demand, because we've just become exam factories now. The practical work's disappeared. We're training children just to sit exam after exam after exam, and it's really dire.
I mean, Anthony, I don't know whether you've got any sort of comments on what Miss Carrod's been saying, because it sounds a really sort of tough gig. I don't know whether you've got any sort of words of wisdom. You've been teaching for 18 years, you know, is there anything you sort of would say?
Before my current role, I'm senior lead teacher at the minute. I was a curriculum leader, head of science for 5 years. So, you know, I can really empathise with the battles that, you know, some of the other speakers are having, because it isn't always placed front and centre in some schools. Like I've already mentioned that I'm blessed where we are with our school, and we've got a hell of a lot of support there. But if you don't have that, you just have to fight your corner, I think, and do the best you can with the tools you've got. We've talked about some of the ideas that cost very little and are very impactful. One other thing that sprung to mind is contact local companies in your area. I had some real success speaking to Seven Engineering in Brighouse, who design and make valves for the petrochemical industry. Just chatting to them, and it turns out they've launched an initiative this year to diversify their own workforce. So they're looking at getting more women into engineering, more ethnic minorities, and our ideas aligned, and they were happy to come into school. So just last week we had their very first female apprentice on the shop floor, Paige, who's a trainee shop fitter, designing and making valves. So we had her into the school last week, along with the senior principal engineer, Simon, again, as a role model, speaking to the girls. And Paige is only 19, so she's just 4 years ahead of where these girls are now, and they can really see that next step right in front of them. She came in a sort of her overalls and her safety glasses, you know, for full effect. And she was really passionate about what she believes. So again, as Mika was saying, it's all about role models. And a big thank you to Mika as well, actually, because and yourself, because you've put me in touch with Innovate Her, because I'd not come across them until they were invited on the show. So I went straight onto the website, and within 30 minutes, I was chatting to somebody called Libby at Innovate Her. It was really helpful. You know, we've already got some irons in the fire and thinking about our next steps. So thank you to you, and thank you to Mika and Innovate Her.
I love that. That's incredible.
Brilliant. You weren't lying when you said there's 9 people and they're always online. So that's really good to hear. That's great. Jotty, I was going to come bring you back in. You mentioned earlier about sort of the, on a similar vein to Anthony, really, is bringing these sort of speakers in, external speakers. I wonder whether you could tell us, if you're still there, a little bit about the reaction of students to those experiences.
Definitely. Before all of the things we embedded, it was I'm going to relate it back to computer science. I don't do computer science. I don't understand it. It's hard, you know, all of that. But as we started to bring speakers in, and it was just not me saying anything, it was much more powerful, because like what our other speakers have said, they're seeing somebody who's actually doing the job, talking about it and inspiring them. So that was really, their mindset did change, that they can go into so many different fields within tech as well. There wasn't just one pathway. When we had the careers fair, we had a young apprentice girl come in from HS2, and she was talking to them about what she's doing, and that gathered so much. A lot of the girls really engaged with that and wanted to know more. And it was just so powerful with the messages that they were sent. I did some feedback afterwards with all the events we've done, and you know, majority of them, it has always been positive, and they want more. I was told a couple of weeks ago, Miss, when's the next one going to happen? When are you going to organise the next one? You know, when can we go on to our next trip somewhere? We've got the Big Bang now is returning at the NEC, and I've taken our students before COVID there, and going back there again for our year 7s and year 8s will be great, because they get to meet those people within the field that can really inspire and link what they would like to do in the future.
Yeah, that's quite. I mean, it's quality, and I have to say, from a history perspective, historians are pretty, and I'm sure it's the same with some scientists. Well, it is because when I was doing Teach Me Science back in January, I approached Matthew Cobb, who is a scientist at Manchester University. He's written several books, fantastic speaker, and he was sort of just willing to give up his time. So there's no reason that somebody like Matthew wouldn't do a Zoom, or wouldn't sort of just give up, a bit of time to sort of even come in, talk to the students. And I had a similar experience with a historian called Paul Reed, fantastic guy, written 10 books, experienced battlefield tour guide. And when I was teaching out in Spain, he did 3 live sessions with the students in Spain, was really, and then when I was teaching in Knowsley, he did it again. So, I mean, these people are out there. They want to get involved. Quite often, if they work in a university, they have targets that they have to fulfill anyway for community engagement. So there is an incentive for them as well to sort of get involved and actually do something for the wider community anyway. And many of them are just happy to help out, So the people are out there. I guess it's just difficult. Yeah, and Innovate Her, they've got their own speakers there who will do that. I think it's one of those where it's just the time it takes to search for it, and I guess that's where you've got to either let someone else do it for you, like a company like Innovate Her, or whatever, or colleagues, or leaders, or whoever, or you've just got to spend that time doing it. But they will be receptive, to it. Heather, hopefully we've got Heather here. We will see. Heather, can you hear me? Possibly not. We were trying to connect Heather in, but I'm not sure her phone or microphone is working well. I'll just remove her again there. Heather, if you're still there and you can hear me now, then maybe restart your phone and try rejoining after you've restarted your phone, and then we'll try to bring you back in at that point. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, obviously we've got International Women's Day coming up.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Heather. I think we can. Is that Heather? Yeah. Can you hear me, Heather? Oh, she's gone again. Well, it was brief, but it was Heather. We could hear you for about 3 seconds, and then you went. But it doesn't matter. We'll get there in the end. Anthony's got his hand up. Anthony, do you want to throw something into this conversation?
Yeah, there's just something I've been kicking around in the back of my mind, and I wanted your thoughts and also the other speakers and listeners about, the challenges we face and sort of the reasons behind poor uptake of STEM subjects post-16. And this is what I've come to. I read a study by the Institute of Physics in 2020. And what I'm getting at is parents and where do we need to assign some responsibility to them for guiding the next steps? I'll just give you a quote from this study here. My dad told me not to study physics because it wasn't for women and the maths was too hard. And that's from an Institute of Physics study of over 600 young people in 2020. So parents are part of the problem, I think, I'd argue.
What is that? Who keeps playing laughing sound effects? God knows what that is, because it's not me. I've never heard that before. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, Anthony. You're absolutely go on. Carry on. Try again.
Yeah, as I say, and I think I'm not really sure what to do about it. I'm just thinking there is possibly an underlying problem there. I think we need to speak to parents, try and break down these barriers. And again, you're not only crushing the stereotypes with the girls themselves, because when they go home, parents might just reinforce those, when they're at home. So I think we may need to bring parents into the equation.
Yeah. I think that's a massive. I mean, I don't know whether any other speakers, Jotty, I think you want to say something on that.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And what I started to do is in our half-termly newsletter, I have a STEAM section, and I've started to put statistics, put information in for parents as well. I did this. I think it was before the summer break last academic. I sent a link of activities, home activities that families can do together in STEM. So sending more information out for parents and letting them know what's out there as well. And also when I organised the careers fair, I did send a message out to parents to say, if there's anyone within this workforce, please, come to us, speak to us, because that's so important. And we did have a couple of parents who wanted to come and speak about what they do and how their career journey has been. So that was really important, that parental engagement. A couple of months ago, I came across a study, and I can't remember the name, where they were doing a workshop where moms and sons coding and dads and daughters workshops, again, to get families engaged and make them understand, well, what does happen, because you do have those negative stereotypes from home as well when it comes to certain subjects, like, oh, maths is too difficult, or computing, I don't understand computers, technology, it escapes me. All of that does feed in. Definitely, I do agree with Dr. Anthony in that part. And engaging parents, making them more aware of it, is so crucial and important. And I know that's something I'm really working towards as well, to get more engagement in and letting parents know this is what we're doing and why we're doing it, and linking it with statistics out there and websites as well that they can go on themselves and search and see.
Brilliant. Mika, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying here. I was just gonna input, an experience that we had in regards to the getting parents to understand how important this is. Before, I think I mentioned a little bit before that. Before COVID-19 happened, we were delivering our programmes face-to-face. Now, these face-to-face workshops were actually usually held after school. And, they all went really well and we got great feedback. But then when we reflected on it, we realised that the students that were turning up were all from very privileged backgrounds. And when we tried to figure out, okay, well, why is it that we're getting this like one demographic of teenager that's coming? And don't get me wrong, it's great that they are, but we felt like we were missing something. And what we realized is that a lot of these teens are from disadvantaged families. If we're asking them to come to this location in the city centre after school, take your child and leave them with us for an hour, sometimes it just isn't doable for these less advantaged families. And I think when we pivoted to go online, one thing that we were really happy about was that our reach just grew, because it's just made us so much more accessible. It took away that location barrier, and it allowed more students to be able to reach us and schools to be able to reach us. So I think a lot of it is quite difficult, because if you do have families and they are less advantaged and they do struggle to get the kids involved in these brilliant initiatives, I think it then becomes, okay, how can we make this this content accessible? And I think that's what we're really trying to do, but it isn't perfect and it is really difficult. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there, because we've had quite a reflective period on thinking about how we can reach parents, and it's been quite a difficult journey for us.
Well, it'll be a challenge, I would think, for anybody in any subject area, it's sort of at the moment, for sure. Miss Cara, do you have anything from your side in terms of successes you've had, or the comments you want to make on engaging parents in your school with science, with STEM?
Well, I think a lot of the girls are sort of coming round and they're seeing like new avenues now, because I've been explicitly trying to do something about it. I've also cleverly got one of my younger female Muslim members of staff who wears a hijab to run the STEM club to encourage more girls in, because my department was male heavy. I've balanced that up a little bit more. But I would like to get more of the men in my department working with the girls, to be quite honest. I can hear that there are a couple of men in other schools who are really working hard with the girls, and I really don't want this to become in my school something that the women just do. Men have a responsibility to inspire the girls as well.
Yeah. It's. I think we've sort of said everything we can on it in terms of what you can only do what you can do. At the end of the day, and yeah, Anthony, do you want to say a bit more on that?
Yeah, there's just one last thing I'd suggest, which we've gained a lot of traction with recently, and it's getting into primary schools. Within our MAT, we've got 4 primary schools, and my colleague Hayley Wild has set up something called the Primary Science Hub. So once every half term, all the primary school teachers from each of the 4 primaries come down, and Hayley puts together a program of study that links to the EYFS and Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, but it's delivered by us as a science team. And obviously they're not science specialists generally in a primary school setting, so they really appreciate getting hands-on with the equipment. They get the training from us. We can perpetuate that message about crushing that stereotype. The Draw a Scientist test. That was the first session that I launched in my session as part of this, and that was the first slide. It was the Draw a Scientist test. In fact, I got them to do it. I got the staff to draw it and see what came out. So I think get to the children as young as possible. Get into primary schools. Work with the primary school teachers. British Science Week is a great time. If you offer your time to get into local primary schools, they'll snap that up. Take some equipment down.
Anthony, do you do a lot of sort of work with primaries?
Yeah, especially with the primaries within our MATs. In British Science Week, we have there's 20 science teachers in the department, and an email always goes out, who wants to go into the primary schools this year? And it's like a huge race, because it's a fun day out. The kids love it, and if you're inspiring that next generation of female scientists at age 5, 6, and 7, they're gonna bring that with them to secondary. So you've got less of a battle, I think, to inspire them when they finally get to you.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. I don't know whether anyone else wants to comment in terms of primary sort of link work, transition work, because we haven't really mentioned that. We haven't really touched on that yet in terms of how that can help or inspire things. I don't know whether anyone else wants to jump in. Jyoti, I don't know whether you've got anything on that and the work you've done maybe in transition.
Yeah, and I will be going to do some more on it now. I'm leading on it, but exactly what Dr. Anthony has said. And I spoke to the head of science at my school about this last year, about bringing the primary school children in within our trust to the science labs, getting them familiar with the environment and seeing what they can do. That is something definitely to work on. We've done kind of masterclasses with at primary school, so we've gone over and done a couple of sessions with them. I remember doing some computing work about algorithms with some of the children and jam sandwiches. So anyone in computing teaching will know jam sandwiches and algorithms. And I made this robot Chohan up for them, and these students were in year 4, year 5, and now they're in year 9. And I remember when they started our school and they came to year 7, they were like, "Oh, we remember Robot Chohan." So it's great, getting into primary. Definitely agree. Getting them familiar. It's great building up those links with them.
I wanted to ask, like, all 3 of you are in like middle leadership, senior leadership roles. Like, if you had a magic wand on STEM funding, like, what would you? If I gave you like £10,000 now, no, let's call it £20,000. If I gave you £20,000 now, like, what would you use it on? Miss Carol, I'll start with you.
Equipment for practical work. So a class set of microscopes, because the microscopes like over £100 each. The physics equipment, some of it is so old because it's so expensive, and it's just as expensive to fix it. So there's quite a few bits of physics equipment that we'd probably spend it on. I'm not a physicist, so don't ask me what it's called. So equipment, really we need it. That's what I find, that I'm always scrimping and saving for equipment.
Okay, Anthony, what would you spend £20,000 on, particularly with getting girls into STEM? Is there something you'd like?
I think, as I say, I think we've done an awful lot with very little. So I'm glad. Thanks for the thinking time there. I've just been racking my brains, and you know what it would be, because our cohort is, they're from such a deprived area, that there's not much money to get them outside of Halifax. So I would be spending that money on taking the children out down to London, get to the Natural History Museum, over to Manchester, the Science of Engineering Museum, get down the Yorkshire Coal Mining Museum, which we try and do anyway. But we will pay this time. We'll use that money to break those barriers and open those doors, and keep those doors open. So it would be getting them out of Halifax to see science and STEM around the country, I think, or maybe even outside of the country.
Brilliant. Rossi, anything you would spend £20,000 on?
I'm honestly, I really am blessed with the school I'm in as well. I had a project idea last year of creating a STEAM lab, and I was really supported. I was funded by the school, and I launched my STEAM lab in September, and we use it for club. We're going to hopefully use it for curriculum time in the future. So I've been lucky in that way when it comes to funding. And also, one thing to mention for our listeners is I've applied this year for an Infuse partnership grant, which we successfully got. So it's £25,000 over the 2 years, with at least 6 schools, 6 to 10 schools that you can join in this partnership, and you can really raise the profile of STEM. So if anyone is looking out there is this grant that you can apply for. And I've been really lucky with that, and just trying to get more things for our students that we can do, equipment, but also going out on trips as well, and also staff CPD, and supporting staff as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Fantastic. We've got Heather and also Giselle. Hopefully, Heather, can you hear me? No, still can't. Heather, we're going to have to give up, I'm afraid. The power of the technology has deserted you and us on that occasion, but maybe there'll be another time. Of course there will. Giselle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you, Tom?
Good evening, not too bad. And how's Miami?
It's doing well. Warm as always.
Fantastic. Now, you have a STEM background, so what are your thoughts on all of this?
So my job is, I actually work at a science museum, and my job specifically is to create access points for secondary students to go into the field of STEM. And so I do a lot of grant writing, trying to create programs in order to get kids, especially in underrepresented and underserviced communities, to go into the field of STEM. And I think one of the biggest key points I wanted to mention is universities and museums are always trying to find ways in order to give back to the community, but they just never know how or what they can do. So what I would advise is for teachers, especially, to go into these universities, contact professors.
Yeah.
They're always giving away computers and equipment that they just don't see use of using, just because technology is constantly evolving.
True.
Also looking at grants, looking to write grants with museums or with educational institutions, because they have people who write grants just for programs like for high schools to create a science club, especially for girls. And yeah, that's probably the biggest advice I have, is to look into those spaces for support.
Oh, that's fantastic and absolutely true. I think universities are actually an untapped resource across the board in schools. I really do think that. I think there's a lot of, as I said, they set themselves targets on how they can help subject communities, schools, whatever. And this is just like individual professors and stuff. So we're not talking about the universities as institutions, even though they would help too. But like actual individuals who work within them are very keen to actually get into schools, get involved, help out in whatever way they can. Like if they're doing like a PhD or something like that, then often an element of that requires like community activism or some sort of work within it. It could be a school, counts towards that. So it's well worth looking at that. Unfortunately, those sort of email addresses are really easy to access on the websites of the universities. You can get staff emails like really easily. It's not like you have to search and scour the web for contacts or whatever. It's quite easy to get in touch with them, even the higher profile people within unis. So listen, we are running out of time. Mika, I don't know whether you have a final thought or word or bit of inspiration that you want to share with us to finish off.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot there. No, I just
It's all on you. No one else is going to share anything of use now. It's all on you.
A bit sweaty now. No, I just want to thank you for letting me be on the show. As I mentioned before, it's just been, to be honest, it's been quite heartwarming to hear from people who are just so passionate about it, and it is why we do what we do. I'm going to do one more shameless plug. Please do sign up to one of our assemblies next week, or just drop us a message and we can see how we can work together in future to get your girls and non-binary teens and diverse teens interested in STEM. And one thing that I just want to mirror, which I think has been one of the strongest link between all the speakers and all the guests today, is just really start plugging those female role models wherever you can. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you so much for having me today.
Brilliant, Mika. And if you want to find out more about Innovate Her, go to innovateher.co.uk. You can get involved right now. And there's plenty of free opportunities and possibilities to do that. As Anthony was stating earlier, he was already on it. Brilliant. Listen, I want to say a massive thanks to all my guests and every single listener. I know Wazeek has just joined in the last, literally minute, Wazeek. So thank you very much, Wazeek, for joining us for the final 60 seconds. But I want to thank Paul, Steve, Giselle on a break. I don't know who you are on a break, but I feel like we need to send you a Teachers Talk Radio mug because you've listened to so many shows. So can you DM us so we can send you out a limited edition Teachers Talk Radio mug? Yeah, you got that right. I know. I can see how excited you are right now. So just drop us a DM with your address. We're going to sort out a mug. And, Paul's already got a mug and it made his life. I don't even know if Steve Woods is our regular. I'm sure you all know him. He's the 2-minute tech guy. He's like the tech guru on all the Teachers Talk Radio podcasts and shows. Steve's got a mug. He knows how good they are. And if he hasn't got a mug, we need to give Steve a mug. We probably have. But I just want to thank every single person for getting involved. It's been inspirational. It's been interesting. I've got a huge amount out of it. I'm not even a scientist, so it's been magical. I know Heather couldn't connect. Heather, we apologize massively. Please send a letter of complaint to Apple or whoever it is who provides your mobile phone. We hate them. Not Teachers Talk Radio. I do. We do, but not the company or any other organization. And other phone providers are available. But I'd just like to thank everybody for getting involved, all the tweets, all the comments. And we will be back tomorrow. My goodness me, we've got an exciting one tomorrow night. You got to tune in. It's on Spaces again. It's live, and it's the NEU General Secretary debate between the two main candidates who are going to be president of the NEU. So that's live and exclusive on Teachers Talk Radio tomorrow night on Spaces, 7:30 p.m. Anthony, you'll be there, won't you? Because you want to give up Friday night to find out what these candidates want to say.
That's absolutely fine. As long as a bottle of red wine there and a couple of beers, I will be there in the background.
Well, anyway, it will be tomorrow. So if you've got any interest in sort of educational politics, then that is definitely the show for you tomorrow evening, 7:30 p.m. Thanks very much to the admin as well for adminning this behind the scenes, every listener. And this will be available as a podcast, by the way. So very soon it will be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all those other ones. So if there's somebody out there who you think, this would be a good one for them to listen to, find the podcast tomorrow and send it on to them. Cheers, everybody. We'll be back again soon. Cheers, all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.